Okay, so now that I have said roadway, what about this whole vehicle thing? So I want to actually be able to draw vehicles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new semi, let's say. So I'm going to say a new class semi. And what this is going to do is it's going to extend vehicle. Kind of weird, you might think, but there you go. So what does that do for me? So I have this vehicle, which has an x, y, width, height, speed, has a paint me method. Semi automatically gets those things. I can actually talk about semi's x and y position now. Because he's a child of vehicle, he actually gets a set of all of these variables automatically. So the way it works is that if a child class doesn't have something in the parent, it automatically inherits it. It automatically gets it. So all of these methods are automatically done. Now the trick is that I don't want to use this empty paint me method from vehicle. I actually want to create my own. And maybe I'll make this guy blue. So maybe semis are blue. Yeah, import that. All right. So if the colors, this guy's blue and he draws himself, I'll need to have this stuff set up, but I'm basically going to draw his x, y, width, and height. So once I set the x, the y, the width, and the height for this particular semi, it'll automatically be created. I probably should be able to pass that in. So public vehicle is going to have an new x, new y, new, well, width and height should probably be specified by the actual vehicle itself. So I think I'm just going to have those. So width and height, I'm just going to say are zeros up here, and I'll have the child class override that. So y equals new y. So I'm just taking whatever the parameter was passed in, this number, and assigning it to the x and y. So a semi, when I have a constructor for this guy, and he gets a new x and a new y, I'm actually going to set these values for him. So the first thing I should do is I should call vehicles constructor here and basically set these things. So I don't need to set the x and y. All I do is I say, hey, do the things that vehicle does. And what that'll do is it'll basically fill in these two values and call those things in vehicle, which automatically sets the x and y. So he's done, and now he can change the things that are particular to him. And for example, let's say I want my width to be, I don't know, 120 or something like that. I'll play with these numbers in a minute to try and get them somewhat appropriate. And speed is 5. Why not? So if I create a new semi, he calls vehicles constructor, sets his own width, height, and speed. Now, we can't see any of this quite yet, so what I should probably do is do the whole thing where I actually draw vehicles. Now, road is actually going to have all of the vehicles contained inside of it. So I'm going to create something called an array list to deal with that. So array list is a lot like an array, except that you can have any number of things inside it. You can add and remove things, and it doesn't throw an array out of bounds exception. It'll expand or contract to meet that. So I'm going to have a cars array. It's going to be a new array list of type vehicle. So this is called a, when you have this thing in the less than and greater than signs, that's basically saying this is a, this array list is going to contain these kind of things. Now, one thing that you might find interesting is that I said an array list of vehicles. I didn't say an array list of vehicles or of semis or of SUVs or sports cars. The reason why that's interesting is what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually walk through, grab things out of it, and tell them to draw themselves. So I'm going to have a for loop, because I love me some for loops, down here in the drawing. Cars.size, and rather than I, let me use A again just to make it clearer for people what they need. So each car, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, get that particular car and draw itself. And by the way, here's this graphics G thing, and you can draw using that. So basically draw yourself on the panel, because this is the panel surface is what this graphics object means. So that's interesting. What happens then? Let's actually try putting something in this thing. So let's do public void add car, where I actually take a vehicle, V, an excellent name I know, and actually put it in my cars array. This is going to come from traffic, so I'm going to do that real quick. So after I set this visible, I'm going to create a vehicle out here. Let's actually create a semi. Test semi. So new semi. It's going to be at, I don't know, 10, 20. And then my road, I'm going to add that in. Add cars, add car. And then I'm going to tell the frame to repaint again. So it actually calls the paint component method on everything inside of it, which goes to road, calls its paint component. Paint component draws these things here, and then it's like, hey, why don't you, each of my cars that have been added in, why don't you draw yourselves? There we go. That semi is perhaps a little long. Anyway. So this may be a little strange. I said, first of all, I added a semi into the road. Why is that weird? Because this is a semi. And you know how Java complains about everything that's not exactly right as far as like the naming of things? This is a semi. This is not technically a vehicle, right? It's a child of vehicle, but it's not a vehicle. And this array list only holds vehicles. So this is another interesting thing about inheritance. If I have something that contains a parent class, say a vehicle, I can actually hold any children of that thing inside it as well. So when I get a vehicle out, I can actually, or let's put it this way. So if I put in a semi, I can get it back out again because it's a child of vehicle. And I'll have a sports car and an SUV eventually class as well. And I can put those inside of this cars class as well. When I get it back out again, it thinks that it is a generic vehicle type, because everything the vehicle has, semi has automatically as well. However, when I get to this paint me method, notice that it actually drew the blue box. That means it did not use this one in vehicle, it used this one in semi. So the next rule you need to know about inheritance is if a child, say semi, has a method that is the same as its parent, the child method always gets used. So what this allows you to do is you can get all of the code your parent has automatically, and then you just change the things about yourself that are different. For example, the semi actually has a drawing event that draws itself in a particular color, for example, whereas vehicle has a paint me method which does nothing. I have to put this in though, because this is a vehicle, a generic vehicle that's coming out of it, and so it expects this paint me method to be somewhere in a vehicle. So this is this little trick here where I have a list of parent type things, but I put children into it, is called polymorphism. It's a special term that means that I can actually change the way that the child class behaves, but use the parent inside of my generic types of things. So more on polymorphism. Let's add another one in. So I'm also going to create a new class SUV. And it's actually going to be pretty similar to this guy, so I'm just going to copy Semi's code and change the appropriate things. So the first thing I should do is say, hey, that's actually an SUV. The next thing I should say is, oh, by the way, you extend vehicle. It's kind of a family tree of classes. In fact, it is a family tree of classes. Now, this guy's width and height might be a little different. By the way, the Semi was really huge. So let me make the Semi a little smaller. With the SUV, I'm going to make it even smaller yet. So maybe 60 and 30 or something like that. Maybe I'll make his speed 8. You're going to be green, I guess. And he's just going to do the same filled rectangle. So now if I go back to my traffic, add a SUV to my experimental test. Maybe I should put him down in the next lane down. There we go. All right. Sports car is basically the same idea. So I'm going to take this kind of idea and make another class. So it's going to extend vehicle. Oops, I want to grab this stuff. Let's see, you're going to be a little smaller yet. I'm going to make you red. And you're going to go that fast. And I'm going to make one of you and put you in to test. All right, there we go. Look, it's red. Oh yeah, I drew it over the top. There we go, something like that. Okay, so now I have cars I can add in, and I can draw them on a road. And I have my family tree of vehicles set up.